So I just added a couple of notes on my side. So we're talking about budgeting and all that stuff, which is really cool. And some people, like I say, have tried it in the past, it didn't work, so they're just going to throw in the towel and just say, okay, that's not for me. So I tried to address the question is, why should we budget? I think that's really important, and I think Bernard shared quite a bit about that as well, about financial discipline. And I think probably for us as Christians, the main thing is spiritual breakthrough. Jesus said in Luke 16, verse 11, he says there, so if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, you will trust you with true riches. And true riches comes from above. So the true riches, if you think about what Jesus said, is the way that we work with our finances, there's a direct link with the spiritual gifts that the Lord is entrusts to us. So if we are faithful in the small things and the way that we keep our budget and that we manage our finances, then it's a sign to the Lord that He can trust us with the true riches, which is the spiritual blessings. So that's just something, one of the, for me personally, one of the main reasons why it's really important for me to budget. And then the other thing I said is the parable of the talents. Jesus spoke quite a few times where He gave different people different amount of talents, and each one of them, He called them back afterwards and said, listen, I gave you these talents, what did you do with it? So one day we're going to be accountable to the Lord of what we did with the material things in our life. Did we use it to further God's kingdom, or did we just do it just for our personal consumption and for our personal desires and stuff? The other day, Natasha had to go up to a funeral up in Johannesburg. One cousin passed away all of a sudden, and he was a young man. He was like 50 years old. And so I remember last week the funeral letter was lying on the table, and I just looked at the letter and I just realized, listen, that could be me. In a year's time, they can be looking at my funeral letter. And what happens the day when I step out of my body into eternity? How am I going to answer towards the Lord with the stuff that He's given to me? Is He going to say, well done, good and faithful servant? Or is He going to turn around and say, no, go away from me, I don't know who you are? So I think in finances is probably one of the beginning steps of working with talents and making sure that we're accountable with the way that we work with our finances. I think that is one of the reasons as well why I say it's important to budget. The other one, I said the pain of discipline versus the pain of regret, that we need to choose our pain. So I think if you can get into a discipline of working with a budget and stuff, the earlier you can do it, the bigger the benefits are going to be long term. Where you don't want to get to the end of your life and then you realize, shucks, I messed up this whole thing about finances. I made a lot of foolish mistakes when I was younger and stuff. And Derek is also going to share some stuff about that, about financial wisdom, looking at long-term things. You guys must really try and be here next week. It's going to be really good. I've seen the notes. So pain was the one thing. The other thing that I've made over here is that you cannot be successful. You cannot have a successful life without discipline. Without exception, winners are winners because of discipline. It doesn't matter what you look at. If you look at athletes or anything, those guys don't win a race by accident. People don't become wealthy by accident. They do it because they're disciplined in the area of their finances. So I think that is another reason. Consistency pays. Again, I made a note here about the story of the war room, where he made that statement. He says that no victory is accidental. We must remember that if we want to win, our victory is always going to be planned. We don't just win by accident. That's really important. Another nice saying that I've heard in the past, they say failing to plan is planning to fail. So if you don't plan your finances and plan where you're going with your finances, the chances are that you're going to fail financially. Where if you draw up a plan and you know exactly where you're going financially, the chances are much better that you're going to reach your goals than starting out without any goals. Also remember, budgeting is a journey, it's not a destination. Once again, I refer to the thing about driving a car. There's certain times or certain periods, especially if you've been budgeting for a long time, there's certain times where I spend a lot of time on my budget and I focus on it and I make sure that everything matches. And then there's certain areas where I maybe let it slip for a bit, but then I would realize, okay, things are not working that well, then I just pick it back up again. So I don't think it's a daily discipline that you must do to the T for the rest of your life, because then you're going to not defeat the object. It's good if you can do it. Not everybody is inclined, or their personalities doesn't let them be that way. So I'm one of those guys. Like I said, I know how my budget works and stuff. There was probably a period of about 5 years where I managed my budget on a daily basis. Every single day, I would go through the previous day's bank statement, see what is happening over there. I would log it on a spreadsheet. I would know exactly how much money I've got left for spending money, how much money I've got left for fuel and all that type of stuff. And then, like I said, now I'm at that stage where I know how much I'm supposed to spend, and if something goes wrong, I know exactly when to start identifying something like that. Yeah, so remember, it's a journey. So if you do it, and it doesn't work out in the beginning, don't despair. Don't just give up and say, no, this thing is not going to work. Pick it up again, do those exercises. I mean, it's just those 4 steps. Go back, see what you've done the previous 3 months, get an average, and from there go forward so you can keep on doing this thing. Yeah, so I said over there, forget the past, focus on the future. No one in a race ever looks back. And there's a saying that I always love saying, and I've said it to Pastor Ryan a couple of times as well, is the saying of T.D. Jakes. He says, a miracle, your miracle is never in what you've lost. It is always in what you've got left over. So if you think about all the miracles in the Bible time, you know, the lady with the oil and all that stuff, the miracle was never in what they didn't have. The miracle was always in the little bit that was left over. The Lord took that fishes and the bread and he multiplied that. The lady with Ezekiel with a little bit of oil that she had, you know, he went and said, no, bake me a bread, and the next minute the oil just didn't stop. She couldn't find enough containers to fill it. So our miracle is always in what we've got left over. It was never in what we've lost. Last saying of him, which I read in a book, T.D. Jakes wrote a business book once called Soar, and I think I did a couple of teachings on it, which is really amazing. But he made a statement in one of his videos there. He says, there's an old person inside of you who is depending on you to be smart. Do not disappoint that person by being foolish in the strongest years of your life. So I think that is such a powerful thing that is said, that we need to try and think of ourselves in 10 years' time or in 20 years' time or 30 years' time when we're in retirement, and realize that that person down the line is depending on you, where you today, to make wise decisions today, because whatever you choose today is going to influence you in 10 or 20 years' time from now. So that is such a powerful thing.